was all about patriotic child rearing. He laid on the stripes, I saw stars. Old-fashioned patriotism, my dear friend. I was in Austin, Texas last night at a pro-life event with a great organization that does legal work for young girls whose parents are trying to force them to have an abortion. And it's just mind-boggling that a parent would not just urge or encourage, but would insist that their own daughter would end the life of what would be their grandchild. And I listened to those incredible stories of two very courageous and gifted young attorneys down in Austin, Texas. And my heart was just filled with the fact that across this country, there are people who are doing great things that most of us never even hear about. I'm so glad that we got to hear Jason today and realize God is doing an amazing thing on that ranch and in that church. And as I listened to him and the profundity of his message at night, I couldn't just help but be overwhelmed with the fact that here's a guy who really does understand the basic realities of life. And he was talking about how, well, I don't have a great education. I'm thinking, no, you've got a great education. It's those Harvard boys I worry about. In fact, as I sat listening, just spellbound to his message, it occurred to me, that's who we need as Secretary of Defense. It'd be nice to have him tell Bashir Assad, whoa! I think he'd get it. When he talked about a red line, people understand we really meant it. We're at a place in our world right now where nobody trusts America. Nobody believes in America. Sadly, nobody fears America. To be honest with you, I don't care if people like us around the world. I really don't. I've spent my whole life with people who didn't like me. I can live with that. But I never want this country to get to the place where people do not fear the United States of America. But I don't want to get to the place where this country does not fear God, because if we don't fear God, nobody will fear us.
That's right. Yeah.
And I pray for that. You're going to hear some amazing presentations in a few minutes when Congressman McEwen comes and shares what I think may be one of the most amazing messages of the simplicity of government that I've ever heard in my life. And of course, my dear friend David Barton, who I think is one of the great minds of our generation, one of the most insightful people into understanding who we really are as a country. I wish every person in America could understand more about our heritage, more about who we are as a nation. The nation that does not know where it has come from is a nation that will have no clue as to where it's supposed to be going.
That's right.
When a nation forgets its history, it is like an individual who forgets his own memory. A nation without an understanding of history is a nation with amnesia. If you had woken this morning and you had no idea your name, your home address, your phone number, your social security number, you didn't know who that was laying in bed beside you, boy, that could be trouble at a conference like this. If you had no memory whatsoever of anything about your life, you would be utterly lost. You'd be absolutely confused. You'd be in darkness. Because the degree to which we do not know our past is the degree to which we are disoriented. And if you wonder why America is lost and disoriented today, it's in large measure because we do not know who we are. We have forgotten the fact that we are one nation under God, indivisible, and we're supposed to be a nation with justice for all. Not to those who are well-connected, not to those who are in the places of power, but justice for the person who has no other voice but his government to speak for him. And his government is not supposed to speak only for the loud and the proud, but his government is supposed to speak for the smallest of voices in our culture. This is a country since 1973 has snuffed out the voices of 55 million of the most tender voices that it had, and it wonders why it's lost and why it's disoriented. God help us all when we cannot understand that a nation that's turned its back on our founder, and I'm not talking about George Washington, I'm talking about the fact that this nation would not exist apart from the intervention and providence of a holy God. If it were not for his intervention, there is no way this country ever would have existed. Think about our history. We had a bunch of ragtag farmers and ranchers and merchants and clergy who grabbed the muskets from their mantle that were better suited for hunting rabbits and varmints around their farms than it was to take on the largest, most well-equipped, best financed, and highly trained army in the known world at that time, the British Army, and yet they did it. They did it, and if anybody had taken an analysis of that battle that was forthcoming, people would have said, well, this is going to be over in a quick hurry. And those poor dumb farmers calling themselves America, declaring their independence. Independence of what? Who do they think they are? What arrogance? What ignorance? What kind of insanity would lead people to draw up a document in which they decided that they're going to break away from a country with wealth and power and strength and centuries of influence and start themselves their own little country? What gives them even the notion that something like that is possible? I'll tell you what gave them the notion. They believed that on their knees before God, they were more powerful than any army on its feet before man. That's what they believed, and they lived to see it. Our problem in our day is we forget where the power comes from.
Yeah.
I hear people talk about the power of the ballot box, and believe me, I understand there is a great value in electing good people to office and changing the politics of our nation. But please hear me today, my dear friends. We can change the politics of America, and it may not affect the spiritual direction of America.
Yeah, that's true.
But if we change the spiritual direction of America, it absolutely will change the politics and the future of this country.
Amen.
So the purpose of our gathering here, and I'm so grateful for my friend David Lane, who has beautifully orchestrated yet another opportunity for pastors to get together. But the whole idea behind our gathering is not so that we'll go out and just get active in politics and get some people elected that we think would be given a good government. It's so that we would lead our nation, and specifically our churches, to a spiritual renewal and a moral revival, so that as God breaks through the hearts of his people, the real revival that starts within his church is a revival that will have impact all the way to the tentacles of power in Washington.
Yes.
That's the right order. That's how it's supposed to happen. And my prayer is that you go forth from this event back to your pulpits and you do as one would do as if you took gasoline and poured it on the podium and lit it afire, and that your people would see something in you, a fire, a vision, an urgency that they have not seen ever. And that you would speak as if this Sunday may be the last one on this planet. Because unless God intervenes, it well may be. When Bob McEwen was speaking about the